Hey there, welcome back. Today I'm going to start probably a four probably a four-part series. Yeah, because math is hard. So today we're going to start what's likely to be a four-part series on editing and how books get made editorially. So there will be three videos on different phases of editing, and then a fourth that will be questions. So as I'm going through each of these videos, if something doesn't make sense or there's something that you've heard that contradicts what I'm saying, leave a note in the comments and we'll go through all three videos, cull those for questions, and you can check out the fourth video, which will be our FAQ on editing, and figure out the answers, because that's what we're here for, right? Answers and fire chickens. So at Falstaff Books and in my work, what we're accustomed to seeing are three main phases of editorial. The first round, which is what we'll be covering mostly today, is your lead or developmental edits. That's where someone takes a deep look at the book as a whole, and we talk with the author about how to change any story elements that need work, how to address any controversial issues in the book, any use of language that some readers may find objectionable, character motivations that are unclear or contradictory. Those are all things that we're working on in this first round of editorial. The second round is your copy editing, where we focus on continuity and accuracy and consistency. And then your third round is your proofreading. That's your final pass for typos, grammar, inaccuracies. The way we work at Falstaff is that all three phases of the editorial are done by very smart people who love books, who know books, who understand writing, and they're all going to question the author's choices. That doesn't mean the author is wrong. That just frequently means that questions need to be asked. For example, when I was directing in theater, I would sometimes ask an actor, what is their character's motivation for doing this action in this scene? And a lot of times the actor would open their mouth to respond, and I would stop them. And I'd tell them, I don't care what the answer is. You have to know what the answer is, and it has to be clear in your performance what the answer is. And that same thing happens in fiction editing as well. I frequently don't care why a character does action A, B, F, Z, but I want to know and trust that the author knows why this character is doing action A, F, Z. And if the author just tells me, that'll be explained in the sequel, I'm dropping a breadcrumb, okay, great, let's go. Or I may respond with, we need a little more than this. But this first round of edits, some people call it developmental, some people call it line editing. There's a pretty significant difference there, but we at Falstaff package all of this in what we call a first round edit. The reason for this is we work with authors of widely varying experience levels. There's a whole different deal when you're talking to a Gail Z. Martin, an A.J. Hartley, a David Coe, some of these folks that have published 20, 30, 60 books for multiple publishers across the globe. Well, I'm going to look at their work with a slightly different eye than I am someone like a Drew Bailey, whose first book was published with Falstaff, someone like a Jessica Nettles, or a Sarah Adams, or a Sarah Bond, or Sover. Some of these authors who have collectively published a dozen books. And a lot of times I'm working with them on their first or second book. If I'm working with a less experienced author, it is more a developmental process. I am working with them to make sure that their character arcs are clean, that their plot development makes sense and follows a logical path. With a more experienced author, I'm going to give them more rope early on in the book because I have worked with them a lot, or maybe I've just read a lot of their work. Dandelion, for example, was the first Alex Bledsoe book that I had ever worked on, but I had read many of Alex's books in the past and knew him to be an incredible craftsman. So when I'm working through that book and there's a couple of pieces early on that, this is pretty obscure, Alex gets more rope to hold the explanation until Act 3 of the book because he's proven that he can pull that off. A newer author may get more notes early. It's very important to understand that in a developmental edit, in a lead edit, in any edit, honestly, nothing is a decree. None of the things that I'm making, unless I specifically say in a comment in the document, this is not good, we're not putting a book out with this in it. Otherwise, it's a suggestion. There are very few hard and fast lines in publishing, and my name's not the one on the cover and not the one on the spine. That's the author's name. So if I think that a scene is clunky and needs to be tightened up and rewritten, and the author says, no, I think it's perfect just the way it is, unless I think it's god-awful, I'm probably just going to shrug and say, okay, it's your scene, your book. I'm the publisher, and I think that this will make the book stronger, but it's still your book at the end of the day. I respect my authors enough to not lay down hard and fast decrees like that unless there's a very good reason. And I have done it. I've definitely sent books back and said, this is a hot mess. We need to take it apart and rebuild the whole thing. I've done it to authors that I publish, and I've also done it to books of my own where I've gotten almost either complete or almost complete and thrown the whole book out and started over. Sometimes that has to happen. It's really, really rare. I think I've done it twice in the 300 or so titles we've published. The lead edit, that first round of edits, again, depending on the experience of the authors. If I'm working with a very experienced author, an Alex Bledsoe, a David Coe, a Gail Martin, most of what I'm looking for are going to be more line edit things. This word doesn't really work here. Maybe we tweak this dialogue. You've used this word 3 times in this same paragraph. Let's work on that a little. A lot of it's going to be cleaning up the prose. And it's very important when you're choosing an editor for each of the different steps. I find it very crucial to have a different editor for every step of the process. Yes, people exist who are very capable of doing developmental edit, copy edit, and proofread. I am not one of those people. I am not a copy editor and I'm not a proofreader. I know what needs to happen in those steps, but I do not have the attention to detail or enough of the Chicago Manual of Style memorized to successfully fulfill those roles. So I don't do that work. I'm a developmental and line editor. So what I'm working with authors on is those big story character chunks. But the other reason that I find it very important to have 3 people editing the book, it's not just because they're different sets of skills, and it's very rare to find someone who is equally strong at all of them. It's also because you get too close. Just like you, yes, you, right there, you. You're too close to your book, just like you're currently too close to my fingertip. You're too close to the book to see the holes, to see the weak spots that need shoring up. You need multiple people to do that. And if the same person is your beta reader, your lead editor, your copy editor, and your proofreader, by the time they get to that proof section, they're in the same boat as you. They've read through this book 4, 5, 6 times, and they can't see the errors because the human brain fulfills its own expectations a lot of the time. The human brain will fill in missing words. It will eliminate repeated words. Darren Kennedy, a writer friend of mine, and one of our Falstaff authors, has a really great technique that he uses whereby before he turns the manuscript in, he has his laptop read the book to him. It is a horrible monotone, but the computer does not fill in those skipped words. The computer does not skip those duplicated words. So it's better in that regard because it can catch some of those errors before it even gets to the lead editor. The way we work is the book comes in and it goes into an editorial queue. The lead editor goes through the entire book. I feel that it's important to have the same lead editor for each book in a series if possible, because then they're not trying to catch up. If you get a new lead editor book, three books into a series, then there may be things that they've just lost. So I try to keep as much of the same team together for each book in a series as possible. That doesn't always or even really often work every step down the line, but we do it as much as we can. So the lead editor, again, the way we work in Microsoft Word. No, I don't give a shit what your objections to Microsoft are. I probably have the same objections. I also don't give a shit. We work in Microsoft Word. No, you may not send me a Google Doc link. You must export it into a docx file. If you don't, I'll send it back to you. The publishing world works in Microsoft Word. We work in track changes. That means there's no change made in your document that you don't see. Editors don't change your book. Editors make suggestions which you can then accept or reject. If your editor is rewriting whole sections of your text, then there's probably multiple problems. 1, you may have big problems with the book. 2, you may have big problems with your editor. Your editor should only be making suggestions. Now, those suggestions may involve take this giant chunk of text, yoink it out of chapter 8 and drop it into chapter 6. Because you've done a whole lot of stuff in chapter 6 and 7 that don't get explained until chapter 8, and it makes the reading experience clunky. That's perfectly legitimate. What's not legitimate is we're going to take chapter 8 and scrap it completely, and we're not even going to tell you what we're doing or why. That's not cool. Don't do that. And don't accept having that done. Yes, your editor will probably go through and just delete chunks of manuscript, but you're working in track changes, and it is incumbent upon you, the author, to accept or reject all changes. Nothing Nothing goes out without the author signing off on it. The process goes like this. Book gets turned into publisher, is assigned to a lead editor. Lead editor returns it to either the production manager or the author, depending on how their communication works. Author reviews all changes and suggestions from the editor, accepts or rejects them, sends a clean manuscript back to the production manager. Production manager sends that to the copy editor. Copy editor sends the copy edited manuscript back to the production manager, who sends it to the author. Author reviews all the changes that the copy editor makes, accepts or rejects all those changes and suggestions, sends a clean copy back to the production manager. Production manager sends the clean copy to the proofreader. Proofreader sends those corrections back to the production manager, who sends it back to the author, who accepts or rejects the changes, and then sends it back to the production manager to go to layout. After layout, the author will get one final review to go through page proofs, looking at the PDF of the book and approving or rejecting any changes, finding missed words. That's your last chance. And please don't try to rewrite your book during the page proofs, because we've already laid out the book. We want to make very small, very minor changes so it doesn't have to go through layout all over again. It's not that arduous a process, but it does add time if we have to go back through and reformat the entire book. So the lead editor is looking for story, looking for continuity, looking for character, evaluating character voice. If all your characters sound the same, then your book is boring. So your lead editor will help you tweak your characters' narrative voices so that they sound different enough from each other. Your lead editor is not the person to tell you whether or not Walmart, the name of the store, was hyphenated or not during the time period that this book was written. They may happen to know. And yes, Walmart used to be hyphenated. And yes, a copy editor needs to at least know where to find the information for when Walmart ceased being hyphenated. Same with whether or not dumpster is capitalized. Your lead editor is not the person who's going to catch whether or not dumpster should be capitalized. They're going to be the person who catches on that you can't stuff a body into a normal 30-gallon trash can. I mean, you can, but it either needs to be Peter Dinklage or chopped up to fit it easily into a 30-gallon trash can. Most of the time, you're going to need a dumpster, which, for the record, most of the time should be capitalized. Just like you're making a Xerox copy of something, whether you're using a Toshiba copier or not. Xerox is still copied. Copy is still capitalized. Dumpster is actually a brand name and should be capitalized. Anyway, those are copy editor things. Your lead editors, they're the person who's going to point out problematic elements in your book. We write a lot of books set in the southeastern United States. This may surprise you, but there is a history of racism in the southeastern United States. I know, shocker. The N-word comes up in books. I don't like it. I would prefer that we not use it. But it's not my book. We do have a list of words that are conversation words. If this word appears in the text, we're going to have a conversation with the author about it. The lead editor is going to have that conversation, and I'm going to be part of that conversation, because at the end of the day, all those decisions stop with me. I won't promote a racist agenda with the books that we produce. So if I feel that a book goes too far in using slurs, it's one thing to have a character use slurs to show how horrible the character is. It's another thing if that happens every 5th page and all of a sudden, then you might be protesting too much. And that's a conversation that the lead editor will have with the author. These are not absolutes. I'm not telling you we will never print a book with racial or other slurs in it, because we have and will again, probably. Sometimes it's the right word for the right book. A lot of times it's not. But that's what your lead editor helps you find, because you're too close to it. You can't see the forest for the tree. I'm a shrubbery. I'm not a shrubbery. I'm a fat guy. I can't even hide behind most shrubbery. So it's important that you understand, going into the process, your editor is not making decrees upon you. Your editor is making suggestions. If and how you reject those suggestions, well, that might kill the book. It's very rare. It's highly unlikely, but it could happen. If you and your editor have incredibly disparate views on where the book needs to go and whether or not the book is ready to go, then that's a conversation that's going to get kicked up the food chain to the publisher. Maybe I replace the editor. Maybe we replace the author. We've done a little bit of both in our time, and I don't like doing any of it. But I also don't want someone to release a product they're unhappy with, and I don't want to release a product that I would be ashamed of having on our table at a convention. So it's really important that you understand that when you're working with an editor, it's a dialogue. And especially your developmental editor, it may be a multi-pass dialogue. A lot of books, especially by less experienced authors, go through a couple of rounds of lead edits. Now, some big publishers have reduced their workload by schluffing a bunch of the developmental work off onto agents. And a lot of the bigger presses, they're working with in-house editors that may be less experienced, but they can be if an experienced and skilled agent is serving as a first-round editor before the publisher ever sees the book. That's a benefit to having an agent, and maybe a downside to working with a big house. Your call. I don't know if it's a better way of doing things or not. I don't run a big publishing house. I run a small one. And this is how we work. Our authors seem to be fairly content with our process. And I think the books we turn out are really good. Obviously, I think that, or I wouldn't be going into year 9 of doing this. So understand that editing is a conversation, and every editorial note, change, cut, add, there's an understood I suggest this at the beginning of every change. No editor is saying, oh my God, you have to cut everything out of here, blah, blah, blah. Or if they are, don't work with that editor again, because it seems like it's probably not a good fit. Editors are trying to make the book the best it can be, the most profitable it can be, especially if they work for a publisher. And they're trying to keep everybody out of hot water. You don't want to end up on somebody's website because you inadvertently appropriated their culture, you inadvertently insulted someone. Editors help you avoid a lot of that as well. But they're not trying to change your book. The vast majority of editors aren't failed novelists like some people seem to claim. A lot of us are fairly successful working novelists. I do editing on the side. It's, I don't know, what is that, my fourth hustle? Laura Ann Gilman is a multi-award winning and award nominated author, and she does a lot of great editorial. Kat Richardson, New York Times bestseller, who's also an editor. David B. Coe, who's won major awards, sold hundreds of thousands of books. He does editorial. A lot of us do editorial because, well, you can only sit and write so much. And we like to make books. We like to make books better. So you can work with an established author who knows what it takes to make a good book, and you can kind of sit under their learning tree. And same for an editor who hasn't published who hasn't written their own books. A lot of great editors have not. That's fine. You can still be an incredible editor without publishing a lot of your own fiction. Toni Weisskopf doesn't write novels, but she's a hell of an editor. A lot of these folks who have really risen up the ranks through publishing are fantastic at making stories better. That's the goal for everyone, is to make every book the best we can possibly make it. And it all starts with that first editor. They're going to go through your book with a fine-toothed comb, looking for plot holes, looking for character motivation holes, looking for kitties. Hey, Gandalf. Come on, you want to say hello to people? Gandalf did not necessarily want to say hello to people, nor does he care at all about any of the phases of editorial, as long as they do not keep him from getting his treats in a timely fashion. And he's out. At least there was no bloodshed that time. So that's part one. That is an overview of developmental editorial. Things to take away, your big bullet points. One, no one is changing your book. They are making suggestions on how to improve your book, but none of them are rewriting your book. They will make suggestions for you to rewrite your book. Two, it is a multi-step process, and very few people can handle all flavors of editorial successfully. Also, it is important to have multiple sets of fresh eyes on each project. Three, it's a conversation. Talk to your editors like you're talking to a normal human being. You're not talking to some monolithic entity of the editor. You're talking to a person who's sitting behind their keyboard, busting their ass, trying to make your book better. That's all they really want, is to make your book as good as it possibly can be. And four, they're on your side. You're not entering into a fight with your editor. As long as you understand that you're all working towards producing a great book, it'll cut down a lot on your fear, a lot of your concern, and it'll help cut down on a lot of arguments and a lot of stress. So just remember that we're all trying to make something awesome. So now you, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell to get notified. If you want this stuff a little early, you can sign up for our Patreon and pick up some other fun perks. And now go make something incredible.